afternoon, everyone, or morning or evening. No, I think it's afternoon in most places. So we are just going to wait a few seconds to start the webinar whilst everybody joins. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Hale. I work for the German Water Centre. And for those of you who don't know vPvM, it's a Horizon 2020 research project where we're looking at interlinking prevention, prioritisation and removal strategies to protect the environment and human health from persistent and mobile substances. So those are the first two things to know. Second of all, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. So we are very happy to have somebody from ECHA speaking today. It's our colleague Konstantinos Prevedouros, and he has been working at ECHA for more than 16 years. So he has a lot of experience. Before he started working at ECHA, he was working in academia, and he's a regulatory ecotoxicologist now. Kostas has been working with a lot of different things, but primarily with REACH and the CLP regulations. So for those of you who are up to date with what's happening in the policy world, there has been new hazard classes introduced to the CLP regulation. Some of those are very interesting for 0PM, specifically the PMT and the vPvM hazard classes. So Kostas is going to present today the current status of the new guideline that ECHA is working on for the CLP regulation and these new hazard classes, amongst other things. So we're very happy, Kostas, if you can just go ahead and give your presentation. For everybody who's listening, if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. Hans-Peter will be doing a kind of moderated Q&A at the end. Anything we don't get a chance to answer, Kostas will follow up with afterwards. So please do put everything in there as we go. So without any further ado, Kostas, it's all over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you very much for the chance that you have given me with Hans-Peter to introduce the current developments from that regulatory point of view. Introduce, as Sarah said, the new guidance that is currently under development, as well as hint and give you a small flavor of the regulatory administrative practices surrounding the process that we call harmonized classification and labeling under CLP. Unfortunately, I don't have the chance to see who is online. I cannot see even the questions, but bear with me. I'm sure you're more familiar to this than me, so we can take as many questions as possible. If there is a question that I cannot answer immediately, I promise to go back to my colleagues and come back to you via Sarah and Hans-Peter to as quickly as possible with an appropriate answer. So indeed, we will give you an overview, a very high overview of the guidance development. In this slide, you can see the list of authors. So this is not an exercise that involves only myself. It involves a lot of colleagues in ECHA, and as you will see also other colleagues. I mean, the development of the brand new guidance, CLP guidance on the new PMT and PBT hazard classes. So to start with, ECHA is generally very keen to reach out, to very relevant academic research, industry activities, no matter how you call it, activities such as your project, basically to follow scientific developments in different areas, in different research projects that are very, very close, and our regulatory activities in a way depend also on these parallel activities in the scientific level. As such, ECHA, this was not always the case, but in recent years, this has become much more prominent. And an example here that I included in this slide is the project called PARC. I don't know how familiar you are with this. Maybe some of you even participate in this project, European Partnership for the Assessment of Risks from Chemicals. It is called, and there in the slide, I find I don't want to replicate it, but this is an important point that I want to communicate. What is ECHA's interest in either participating or anyway following parallel scientific / research activities. Basically, we want to make sure that the outcome of your work can feed into our work, and or the other way around, that we make sure basically that the whatever scientific advances are fed back into the regulatory world as well. And your outcomes, basically your milestones, bring added value to the EU regulatory processes that are managed, in this specific case, by ECHA. So more related to the 0PM project, and we will come back to that in a few slides more analytically. We have received an observer status, if you will. I have personally participated in the Gothenburg 2023 meeting. I gave a presentation there. I met a lot of you, which was really, really good. A lot of people that I knew also from my past academic life. Also, I have given a so-called motivational talk to some of the project's PhD students and postdocs. That's also about a year ago or so. So the outline of the presentation is that I will have a very short few words about how the European and global legislation for classification and labeling has evolved over the last 50, 60 years or so, very, very high level. Also, take the opportunity to introduce the ECHA's role under CLP. There may be some misunderstandings or some things that are not fully transparent or known to you. So I hope that I will clarify what is the role ECHA has on this and what is not ECHA's role. I will then introduce the CLH process. CLH process is how we have called the machinery, the administrative regulatory machinery, from the time that the proposal for harmonized classification is sent to ECHA until an opinion is formed via the ECHA risk assessment committee and beyond. So this is the CLH process, which I will show you a couple of slides. The new hazard classes with an emphasis on PMTs and vPvMs. What are the regulatory criteria? Some important aspects for this guidance development over the last year and a half. A slide about mixture classification, because I understand this might be close to the heart of some of you. Unfortunately, there's not so much we can say right now on this, and you will see at the end why, and some next steps of the guidance development exercise in specific. So we consider the Dangerous Substance Directive, or DSD, as the legislation basically that has put into motion, to regulatory motion, the classification, labeling, and packages of dangerous substances in the European level, introducing these hazard classes and concepts that have eventually moved in 2008 into CLP. And at the same time, in the UN GHS level, there was, from the early 90s, I think, there was this try also to harmonize the system. Harmonized means, to apply the same set of rules of regulatory criteria to the degree possible in the global scale now. And in 2002, there was the first edition of publication of this UN GHS legislation, which is very similar to CLP, not one-to-one. Since then, I think there have been 10 amendments to this GHS global regulation. Then, as I said, the CLP regulation, classification, labeling, packaging of substances and mixtures, replaced the DSD and gave ECHA the regulatory mandate to manage the process the same way as ECHA was given the mandate to regulate REACH when it was first founded in 2007. So the purpose and scope is, as in the previous regulations, to ensure a high level of protection of human health and environment as well as the free movement of substances, mixtures, and articles. This is the regulatory purpose and aim of the CLP regulation. So now moving on, basically what is CLP doing? CLP is trying to harmonize classification labeling, use the same basically terminology, indices, also towards the communication to the public by the introduction of some hazard classes, hazard statements, pictograms, etc. Most of you are probably familiar, and I do not need to go into much detail on this. Important thing is that we are talking about, or the mandate is for industrial chemicals, most of which have also obligations under the REACH regulation, but importantly, biocides, which are also run by ECHA, but also pesticides. And the risk assessment of pesticides, as you know, is run by EFSA, but the classification and labeling of pesticidal active substances is managed by ECHA, by my unit, the unit called C4, which is the classification and labeling unit of ECHA. So what are these hazard classes? They can be physical hazard classes, for example, explosivity, flammability, oxidizing, corrosive to metals, etc., etc. It could be hazard classes related to human health, mutagenicity, reproductive toxicity, carcinogenicity, etc., etc. It could be hazards related to aquatic environment, and hazards to the ozone layer. So thus the so-called Annex 6 of CLP contains the list of harmonized classification labeling of hazardous substances. So what has happened when we transited from the DST to CLP was the substances that had a classification labeling back then, they were transferred automatically into the Annex 6 of CLP. And of course, since 2008, we had a few hundred, I think 500 to 600 new substances that have entered the process and entered Annex 6 of CLP via this CLH process that we will discuss in a minute. And obviously the legislation is, the regulation is introducing some obligations for manufacturers, producers, suppliers, downstream users, etc. We are not going into any detail on what that practically means, but this has implications. Maybe some of you know better on the transport, on the storage, on the safety data sets, etc., etc. So this is just a snapshot, a screenshot of some entries from the Annex 6 of CLP in case, or Table 3 of the Annex 6 of CLP, in case some of you have never seen it. So you have the index number. It is a unique identifier. You have the substance name, some chemical identifiers, the hazard class for which the harmonized classification refers to, and some labeling statements, as I said also earlier. I hope the screen has a good resolution so you can have a look of how it looks like. Currently, there are a few thousand. I think how many? It's 3,000 or 4,000. I don't remember by heart how many entries are currently. And every 1 year there is an update and new substances that are the outcome of the CLH process and the decision-making process by the Commission enter CLP. So CLP is amended regularly to add new substances. Okay, so this was the case, the situation for many years until the Commission Delegated Regulation decided to amend CLP to include back in March 2023. So basically, there was a very big regulatory process initiated by the European Commission that eventually, after many public consultations, impact assessments, engagement of stakeholders, member states, ECHA, and others, it was decided that CLP would be the regulatory body into which the new hazard classes for endocrine disruptors for human health and the environment, category 1 and 2, as well as the PBT, vPvB, and PMT, vPvM hazard classes should be introduced. And a detail here is that the PBT, vPvB is one hazard class with a differentiation, and the same goes for PMT, vPvM. This does not have a big implication. It's just how the legal text defines this hazard class. So there is one hazard class for the PMT, vPvM with this differentiation. Importantly, as of 20th of April, so 20 days after the publishing of the amended CLP, or if I'm more accurate, the publishing of the amended Annex 1 to CLP, then 20 days after that, harmonized proposals for the new hazard classes can be submitted. And since then, in early May of this year, 2024, we had our very first ever proposal for harmonized classification of one substance based on its suspected ED properties. So we have not received yet anything for PMTs or vPvMs, but as I will say later on, we have several, we have the intention of member states to send us such proposals for PMTs and or vPvMs in the very near future. Actually, the first one, we are expecting it before the end of June of this year. And ECHA provides support, as we will say in the coming slide, around technical aspects, scientific aspects, regulatory aspects, administrative aspects of handling these proposals for harmonized classification. So what is ECHA's mandate? It is exactly to process the proposals for harmonized classification and labeling. What does that mean? It is anything you can imagine related to administrative support, technical support, scientific insights, you name it. We have a lot of tasks that will become a little bit more clearer in a coming slide. And one of the most important things, and also scientific, that we do is during this accordance check stage, where our task is as an ECHA secretariat to ensure consistent, transparent, scientifically robust, and CLP compliant proposals. Basically, the proposal would not go forward if certain quality aspects are not met. And we try to be pretty strict there of what level of information and how it is presented, so that it can facilitate the opinion-making process. ECHA also has a general mandate to support member states and the ECHA Risk Assessment Committee. Here, again, it is pretty broad what support means. Basically, any support that we are asked to give, we will give it very happily. Also, sometimes we take the initiative, but most of the times it is the initiative from member states that we call them dossier submitters, as well as the Risk Assessment Committee, who is the body in ECHA that makes the opinions on whether a certain classification for a certain chemical, a certain substance is warranted or not. And of course, we give support to the European Commission. Again, here it can be a lot. Maybe they have some questions on the scientific rationale of the proposal, something on the data, or it could also be something in an appeal case where someone has appealed against the Commission decision and ECHA provides support to the European Commission after the European Commission request to ECHA to provide that support. It's not always the case, but it's mostly the case. And the mandate is to contribute to substance grouping and prioritization. I have this in italics because this is only now starting. We will talk more on that in a while. So now this is an important slide as well, because a lot of people have different opinions of ECHA. To me, for example, especially during my first years, everybody was asking me whether ECHA has some kind of, 20 meters inside the ground, any secret lab facilities where we are torturing animals, we're testing chemicals. We are not doing that. We are not performing animal experiments. We are not testing chemicals. We are just processing information on chemicals that is received by registrants or dosage emitters or others. We are currently not drafting any CLH proposal, but this is going to change. This is why I have it in a different font, because CLP, the main body of the text of the CLP regulation, is currently under update to allow ECHA, after the European Commission request, to draft actually CLH proposals, to propose classification and labeling, but currently this is still not the case. The same is an influence on which substances will enter the process. So up to this point, ECHA did not have a very big say at which substances would enter. This was entirely up to the national priorities of member states. So every member state had different national priorities, and based on those priorities, they would submit a proposal for harmonized classification, which would be dealt by ECHA, independent of what the substance was, independent of which hazard classes were opened and which were not. But again, this is going to change, as you understand, if ECHA is going to, if the European Commission is asking ECHA to draft a proposal, then it will have a lot higher power to selecting substances, grouping substances, prioritizing substances, prioritizing hazard classes over some others. So this is going to make our job a lot more impactful and powerful, we believe, which was the intention of the European Commission to start with. So currently, we cannot dictate, we cannot decide basically which classification is warranted. Especially as ECHA Secretariat, the Risk Assessment Committee, which is an independent body in ECHA, may propose. This is why we call it an opinion, but it will be ultimately the European Commission who will decide. Very important aspect is also that we cannot request to generate data, not in the CLH or under CLP at least. There are means that ECHA can request the generation of data, but it refers to processes under the REACH regulation, under dossier evaluation or substance evaluation primarily. So under the CLP regulation, we cannot request data. We just evaluate the data that is available. And as I said, the Risk Assessment Committee only derives opinions, not decisions. And an important aspect that I'm sure we will come back to is that we are not talking about a risk assessment. It is a hazard assessment or a hazard identification exercise, a risk communication, but not a risk assessment. So exposure, uses, etc., are not any deciding factor, any factor in how the process will proceed. I understand this is a very packed slide, which you will have it once we record this webinar, and maybe you go through it a little bit more carefully on your own. I try to squeeze in a lot of things into a couple of slides only. And this is the CLH process. And the next slide also will make it a bit clearer in words. Basically, the process starts by what we call an intention. Intention is when a member state, via an IT solution, informs ECHA that they intend to harmonize, to send a proposal for harmonized classification for substance X for hazard classes Y and Z. This is very important for us because we get a pre-warning basically that something is coming. And this may come in a month or in 6 months. Sometimes it never comes, but it is an indication basically of something coming. Which is you see it by the yellow color, it is the initiative of who we call a dossier submitter, which is almost always a member state competent authority. Then they actually go ahead and they send the dossier submission, which is mostly an Excel and PDF with some attachments, depending also what substance type it is, which is then evaluated by ECHA, as I told you before, during this accordance check stage, where we make sure basically that the information is presented in such a transparent and CLP compliant way that the opinion making is facilitated, that the information is all there and it is in such a way that it can be judged for its scientific merits. Then we launch a 60-day public consultation where every party that has an interest can submit information. Maybe there is a missing study, maybe there's something misquoted or whatever. And then the package goes to the RAC, the Risk Assessment Committee, where they appoint rapporteurs who draft an opinion. The opinion is discussed in one of the meetings of this Risk Assessment Committee, that are 4 meetings in a year. And then an opinion is made, and then it is forwarded to the Commission for the decision-making, which might take another year and a half. And the following slide just summarizes what I just told you. Again, a lot of information there. This is a very big part of our work. This is a very big part of my everyday work to evaluate substances and support, of course, in terms of aquatic hazards, as I am an environmental scientist. Now we go to another very compact and information-rich slide, which is actually the reason why we give this webinar, is basically to be like the bridge between academia and industry. Regulators, the European Commission, ECHA, can act and is good to act as a bridge between academia and industry, as well as a bridge between science and regulatory actions. And it is not in the slide, as a bridge between also science and the lay people who are communicated the classification, for example. And I understand there is a lot of related chat in CTAC of a few days ago. I understand there has been very nice and interesting discussions. Unfortunately, I could not join, exactly about how we bridge academia or an industry. How do we bridge regulators and science? And ECHA wants to become more visible and wants to communicate and open up, of how we can help. How can you help us? How can we help you? And we hope that this webinar can help to that effect. So here I try to find out some synergies, some obvious synergies between Zero PM project and regulatory needs. The obvious one is the generation compilation of relevant hazard information. And I understand this is the working package 6 of your project. If I am mistaken, please forgive me, but also throughout your project. Relevant, important new data is being generated. Priority substances are identified. Very recently, only maybe it is a few days old, I saw a paper coming out of your project exactly on the identification and the grouping of priority substances, also of new substances. So I'm looking really forward to dig into that. This is the work package 5. Also, the establishment of safer alternatives obviously is of a great interest to us, because that means that hazardous, dangerous substances would never end up on our plate, because simply they would be substituted by less hazardous substances. So that is very important. This is the working package 2. Obviously, anything that has to do with the risk communication, you have in your project, the ZeroPM project, a very strong element on risk communication, and hazard classification is all about risk communication. Also, the development of assessment tools. Here I need to say that we are more interested into these hazard assessment tools more than risk assessment tools or other modeling tools that you may also be currently generating. And of course, in an expert's level, such exercise, it's really good to familiarize who is who and how can we get the missing expertise. Also from that point of view, it's very good that we keep collaborating on this expert level, human level, not only in a process level. I understand now I need probably to speed up, because I would like to leave at least 15 minutes for questions. So moving on, maybe this is a slide that I don't need to go through so much. It's about, again, what was the thought process from the European Commission since October 2020, when the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability was published. And part of that basically was this one substance, one assessment concept, which would make the risk and hazard assessment of chemicals more uniform, and the additional tasks that were given to the European Chemicals Agency exactly on that effect. And the idea would be from the Commission that the assessment, especially the PBT assessment, that was part of REACH Article 57, or the so-called SVHC identification process, would move entirely to CLP as the central hub of regulatory activities. So this is a slide that I can pass fairly quickly. It gives you an idea of the application dates. So you see up left the 20th of April that I have said before, that as of that time, the proposals for harmonized classification may be submitted to ECHA. On the top row, it relates to substances already on the market or new substances, and the lower graph is about mixtures. So there is a transitional period to make the regulation obligations somehow more critical and more enforceable, let's call it like that. So this is the slide that I thought that you are all very familiar with. Is basically the purpose of the ZeroPM project. These are the reasons, in my opinion, why there was this regulatory momentum to introduce the new hazard classes, especially PMTs, vPvMs, as there was a regulatory gap these substances are persistent, they accumulate, they can be transferred either in air or in water. They enter the water cycle, they can enter groundwater, they can enter the water resources, they are difficult to remove, etc., etc., etc. So overall, the aim is to protect the water resources. And this is why it was decided that also CLP is the regulatory legal text that should make sure that these substances are regulated. Again, here we don't need to stay very long. It's about the hazard statements and what are the exact names. You see vPvM, for example, can cause very long-lasting and diffuse contamination of water resources. This is a quick overview of the criteria. Here, what we need to get is that basically the persistence criteria are identical to those for the PBT assessment under REACH, i.e. the criteria stipulated in Annex 13 of REACH for P. For the toxicity, they're broadly the same with one or two minor exceptions, and the brand new regulatory criteria are then for mobility. And here I have with a green box is the legal text, which considers basically the log KOC as the appropriate index based on which regulatory criteria are then enforced, and the criteria need to be compared to see if they are met so that the appropriate classification is warranted. And basically here the legislator said that they defined the KOC, the octanol organic carbon water partition coefficient, as the one reflecting the ability of a substance to be adsorbed, and is a measure basically of the mobility. And a numerical criterion of a log KOC below 3 indicates the substance is mobile, and one below a log KOC below 2 indicates that the substance is very mobile. So mobility, again, here is here is another expert from the legal text that exactly indicates what are the information requirements, basically what are the experimental studies based on which relevant information for comparing with the criteria can be generated, results from adsorption, desorption studies, leaching, modeling, monitoring, as well as lower tier approaches as information from QSers and other information. And here the caveat is, of course, always that whatever the information is, its suitability and reliability must be demonstrated. So mobility is referred in some legal texts. Here I have a quote from REACH, but of course it refers only to soil, mobility in soil, and defines the mobility in soil as you can read in the slide. But in general, it is a fairly new concept, especially under REACH and CLP. In REACH, Annex 8, I think there is an information requirement to provide an adsorption study, and so is in the BPR, and most likely in the PPPR, the pesticidal legislation, but it has not been used per se as an independent index that hazard classification can be based on. So in this aspect, it is new, and it is new to all of us. It is new to ECHA. It is new to regulatory bodies in competent authorities. It is new to industry, especially the ones that are not also very familiar with the pesticidal assessment, risk assessment process. So in those processes under the pesticide and the biocide regulations, there is some experience, for example, dealing with leaching studies, etc. But the context there is a little bit different because we are talking about risk assessment and not hazard assessment only. So as this concept has been pretty novel and new, the immediate next thing that everybody has been asking since 2-3 years already now, since the decision that this new hazard class will be introduced in CLP, is where is the guidance? How does the dosage emitter build up the information package to establish whether a classification as PMT, for example, is merited or warranted or not? And here is where the development of scientific guidance is needed for the dosage submission, for the opinion-making process. And that's how we saw this gap. Obviously, the current guidance or the current guidance basically has this hazard classes, as I explained earlier: physical, health, aquatic, ozone. And then it was deemed that, a scientific guidance on these new hazard classes is urgently needed. So we have initiated the process internally in ECHA to start drafting this guidance. And here, yet another very busy slide. On the left-hand side, you see basically the different steps of the process since the end of 2022, when it was decided that the new hazard classes would go into CLP. Until now, there is a series of steps of consultation rounds, of drafting and reviewing and consulting that ECHA has led with the help of member states, with the help of external experts, with the help of industry and other stakeholders, with the help of the European Commission. So I will not read you the slide, but this is a very important slide. And with red fonts, I wanted to highlight basically the different steps that scientific input had entered the process, the guidance development. So everything that you see there in red font is basically process rounds, review rounds, where information was either reviewed or updated or amended or added, etc., etc. And the important thing here, the last two steps, basically where we are now, is that within the next 2 weeks, an almost finalized guidance draft will be sent to the CARACAL. CARACAL is the body that European Commission with member states, competent authorities for REACH and CLP talk regularly, and they will review the draft that we will send them, as I said, within the next 2 or 3 weeks. There will be a written consultation that will last about 4 weeks, and then maybe there will be another round of amendments before the guidance being published around autumn time, maybe October time, if we are to speculate now. And what is the guidance structure? I understand we're running out of time, and I apologize for that. Maybe you could bear with me, and we can maybe extend it a little bit more. I don't know how possible this is, but I will try to be fast. And basically, this slide gives you an overview of the structure of the guidance, which follows the previous one from the R11. This is the REACH guidance on PBT. So the sections on persistent mobility and persistent bioaccumulation toxicity are almost very, very similar to the one that was updated recently, with the addition of mobility. There are introductory sections, there are sections with the actual criteria, with the legal text, as well as information in a study-by-study level, what studies are relevant, how are they relevant, what are caveats and other considerations, what are the special weights of the different approaches, drawbacks, advantages, disadvantages. And then the assessment goes into this weight of evidence approach where all the information is put together and weighted. Some specific tips and advice is given there without preempting the decision of the expert. It's always based on an expert judgment on a case-by-case basis. There are conclusions for each of the property P and B and VP and everything. Then the full weight of evidence also for the actual classification, so looking at all the conclusions for all the properties together. We also have some tips how information from multiple studies can be dealt with. Very little about mixture classification. We have some example substances which are hypothetical, but not fully hypothetical substances. They were mainly during the SVG identification process. And always what we try to repeat is that the guidance development is an iterative process, whereas this will be the first iteration. Then we will have more experience, more real cases as well, scientific advancements from projects like the 0PM and others will feed into the guidance, which will be updated in a few years' time, hopefully not too many years from now. So it is the first step, some scientific guidance for the first cases, and then we update based on the experience gained, also in the regulatory level and the RAC level. Now I need to really move on. So these are some of the experimental study types that can generate relevant information with some considerations, of course, for it. So the guidance provides advice and guidance on each and every one of these studies and test protocols, as well as other types of information, as I mentioned before, that needs to be justified, its reliability and suitability. This is also a quite dense but very important slide. These are in a nutshell, all the different issues that we have encountered and we had to take some decisions on during the development, basically to separate the hazard from the risk assessment, to elaborate further on the reliability, the relevance. What does relevant mean? The uncertainty, how do we address uncertainty or reduce uncertainty? How do we treat outliers, values close to the thresholds, the suitability of the QSARs? How do we treat monitoring data? Aspects about statistical distribution of data. So there's a lot of, and again, this is the first try, so a lot of information there that we had to cover, and with the help of all the project, of the PEG, so-called PEG participants, we hope that we have fully covered to the degree possible, of course, the considerations of the people that have commented on all of these aspects. And now moving towards the end, these are also some very important elements to be considered. How do we involve the experts is a very good point, in an early stage where before all information is generated, and also data about the relevant constituents is quite important to have. This is the sole slide I have for mixture classification, and here basically I have repeated what will be in the amended CLP. The CLP, the main body of the text of the CLP is currently under under update. It will appear online very, very soon, I understand. And here, what is in this slide basically is what is there, basically relating to persistence, bioaccumulation, and mobility. The amended CLP will advocate the use of data, only the use of data for each known constituent. The legal text is not very vocal on toxicity, so maybe for toxicity data on the full mixture also can be used under given conditions, and especially if they demonstrate that the P or B or M property is met, that the valuation is always a weight of evidence determination, and importantly, the Commission has given a derogation for a few years, the exemption basically of substances extracted from plants for given reasons. There will be an interim period that they will not have any related obligations, and then the Commission will review the status in a few years' time. I think it is in 5 years' time or so, but solely on substance extracted from plants. And then the last slide then would be that what is coming. I told you already that in a few weeks' time, we will launch the Caracal consultation, which will last for 4 weeks. And then in the summer, we will perform any changes proposed by the Caracal to have it published sometime in August. And I include in autumn, sorry. And I include a link here of how you can follow online the progress of the guidance. So in a few weeks' time, a link to the draft that will be sent to Caracal will also be uploaded. And of course, we are looking forward to processing the first real cases under the CLH process later in the year. With that, I thank you. I apologize. It took a little bit longer than I thought. I really hope we have enough time for some questions. So I leave it to Hans-Peter and Sarah. Thanks for the patience.
Oh, great. No, thank you very much, Kostas, for that nice overview of the work of ECHA in proceeding with the CLP guidance and the new hazard classes. And I see also on your slide, thank you, see you in September. This is, of course, a reference to the upcoming 0 p.m. prioritization workshop, which will be on substance grouping and risk assessment. And please find out about that at our website. And ECHA will also be there. You'll also be there, Kostas, as well as your colleague, Mike Rassenberg, who is one of our opening keynotes. Yes, so we do have some questions in the chat, and we'll see how quick we can get to them. So I can just start with the first one. This is maybe more for the Commission, but I would like to get your thoughts on this. This is from one of our 0 p.m. colleagues, Timo Hammers, and he's wondering, since there's so many already toxicity classifications in the CLP, such as CMR, endocrine disruption, STOT-RE, why then do we need a specific PM or PBT classification if should not these T classifications be enough? So what, how would you like to respond to that?
I'll try to be very brief. Indeed, the Commission has gone through this process that I told you very quickly, impact assessments, consultations. There were reports from consultants to see exactly that. Is there a concern? As well as how many substances would be captured. And I think part of that was that there is not a big overlap with other hazard classes under aquatic hazards, for example, or even with the limited substances that have already been identified as PBTs. So there was this exercise, this extensive regulatory exercise, where it was deemed that CLP is the correct, the most efficient regulatory body that would fit also in this chemical strategy for sustainability, and of course also to capture this brand new category of substances, the P and M substances that have not been as thoroughly regulated or even not at all. So this is, in a nutshell, the reasoning.
No, Thanks very much, Kostas. And this is a question from Harry Timmer. I'll start with this one. So if he has a substance that he thinks is PMT, vPvM, and wants it to be classified as an SVHC, what should he do, essentially?
So first of all, I think he should go to a competent authority and then organize the activities there. Present the competent authority of a member state, a European member state, with the information package, everything, all the data there. Now, the Commission and the intention is that the PBT assessment, for example, under SVHC identification, to move outside from there, to move directly in CLP. So there needs to be an argumentation, some kind of a debate of what is the urgency, what is the maturity level, et cetera, discuss with the member state, and then decide either to pursue an SVHC identification route, which would eventually automatically transfer the substance from Annex 14 into the Annex 6 of CLP, or go straight to the CLP process, the CLH process, again, mostly via a member state, a dossier submit.
Great. No, thank you. And this is also related to a question that I have. This is a question from Derek Wallace. So what is the consequence of being classified under the new mobility hazard classes? And I'll add in the CLP. Also, if the classification is based on a transformation product. And I just want to add a little bit on that as well, because in our 0PM regulatory watch, we're looking at other regulations where the PMT vPvM classification is popping up, and we're seeing this pop up in regulations related to toys and pharmaceuticals even. And so I'm just so there will be some downstream regulation effects that are being discussed by the Commission. But what is your what have you seen in ECHA regarding this, or what are your thoughts on this?
The process will be at two stages, or at least two stages. The first is the introduction of the new hazard class into CLP, hazard classification to pursue, and then in a later stage, hopefully not too far away from all the necessary amendments. I told you that there was already 2 amendments of CLP, the one finalized already, which refers to Annex 1, and the one which is appearing very, very soon on the main body of the text. And then there will be the respective changes to the downstream regulations, which currently we do not have a very good oversight. This is fully led by the European Commission. They are well aware of the fact that because of overlaps, because of you have substances that are biocides and pesticides, but also partly cosmetics, etc., etc. There is this urgent need that the downstream regulations will also follow suit. Otherwise, the Commission has clarified that the PMT classification will be in a similar level as CMRs, and this is why the body of the text of CLP is currently under update. So whatever implications you have for a CMR, you will have it at the same level for a PBT or a PMT. And for the transformation product, as long as the identification takes place for the same transformation product that is found in a concentration above 0.1%, but the same one is a P, and the same one is an M, and the same one is a T, then the classification of the full substance will be also based on this transformation product or degradation product. This is in very, very fast, my first reactions to the question.
No, that is great. And I do see we do have some more questions in the chat, but I think in the interest of time, we will end it now. And then we will send these questions for you, Kostas, to answer and get back on. And so then I just want to say thank you again for this important webinar, and it will be posted on YouTube. That was one of the questions, if this will be available online. This will be available on YouTube at our 0PM YouTube channel. So once again, I just want to say thank you from the 0 PM project, Kostas, for your great contribution to our 0 PM
Great.
Science webinar series.
Thanks for the hospitality. Thank you.
0 PM. Zero pollution of persistent and mobile substances. This project has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme under grant agreement number 101036756.